Today is the Christ of Kings Sunday, a reminder that Christ is the King of Kings. There is no earthly king, there is no earthly dictator, head of state that is greater than our Lord and our King, Jesus Christ. Today, Trish read another parable, in this case, an illustration that Jesus delivered to his disciples. We need to separate the goats and the sheep. Now, before we get into this and dissect this particular gospel story, there's one thing we should know. And that is, this is not a guilt trip. This is not a checklist. If you believe in Jesus Christ, if you believe in Jesus Christ, God has already given you the grace. Excuse me. I need to get a fisherman's friend. I apologize. As I said, if you believe in Jesus Christ, God has, through his grace, already given you the path to heaven. There's no checklist. It's not a case of having St. Peter at the gate with a computer and a spreadsheet, going down a list, saying, did you do something good for someone that was without money, without housing, in prison, sick? Check, 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 check. Total, you may enter. It's not like that. That's not the way God set up the entrance into heaven. He set it up for those who believe in Jesus Christ. And if you believe in Jesus Christ, then you follow the commandments that Jesus gave us. To love your God, no other God, to love your God. That's number one. Number two, do unto others what you would have them do unto you. If we do those things, then the checklist is all covered. Now, it's easier said than done. Much easier said than done. Most of us likely have never been in a situation where you could go into a prison and help a person. Let me tell you, getting in as a visitor to the prison system these days is very, very difficult. How many people have been in a prison or a jail? You're a good congregation. You are good people. As I've mentioned to you in the past, when I was in my second year at Ryerson taking social services, I worked this summer as a chaplain for the United Church of Canada in the jails in downtown Toronto. I would appear at the old City Hall where the main jail is, the holding jail, at around 6:30 in the morning. And I'd be let in to go around to, there are 2 bullpens there where everyone is collected. In fact, there's 3. There is one for men, one for women, and one for drunks. And you go around and you would have your clipboard and you would say, who needs some help as far as getting and back in these days, by the way, Legal aid had just started, and it was a disaster. I'm not sure it's any better now, but back in those days, you were supposed to be assigned a lawyer, and quite often the companies that were assigned to send a pro bono lawyer forget to send them. So you go around and say, who needs a lawyer this morning? And someone would say, I need a lawyer. So you'd write his name down and you'd check to see whether there was a legal aid lawyer available that could sit and talk to this person before going up to court. Who needs to have their family contacted? And somebody would say, yes, I'm from out of town. I need my folks to know that I'm in jail. Do you know what courtroom you're going to? Yes, I'm going to Judge Graham's courtroom. So you collect all this information, and then there are usually one or two that you would attempt to follow. They'd be somebody that you'd just speak to you that says, this person really shouldn't be here. This person really needs support. I'm going to follow this person through. So you'd go into the courtroom at 10 o'clock, and there was a bench along the side that's set up for chaplains and reporters. And you'd get there, and you'd listen to what happens. Now there's the Crown on one side presenting the case that the police have given them, and on the other side there is the attorney for the defense. As I say, most of these attorneys were appointed by the court, and quite often they didn't show up, so they would grab any attorney that was around and tell them to come up and sit and be this person's attorney during the first part of the trial. Now, quite often, these first appearances would basically determine whether there will be a trial or whether the person will be held over for further investigation, or they would be sent to a date would be established when they'd come back for the full trial. Now, this is a little sick humor, but we used to all sit. There was a United Church chaplain, there was an Anglican chaplain, and there was a Salvation Army chaplain that would usually be there in the morning. And then there'd be 2 or 3 reporters that did the beat, Toronto Star and the Toronto Telegram. And there was one reporter by the name of Samuel that was a really very good reporter. And we used to have a little side bet as chaplains as to which was the case that he would write up. And if you got it right, you got a coffee by the other 2. That was sort of the bet that we had going on. So we'd sit there, oh, that one's good, That's a break and enter, and the guy left his fingerprints on the and he used silver paint, and he had silver paint in his hand. Yeah, he'll write that one up. This guy is so guilty, he's got him, So you have this little side bet going on. But it's scary. It's scary once you hear the clang of the door saying that you're locked in. And although our system is set up that you're innocent until proven guilty, once you're in the system, you're guilty as far as the correctional officers are concerned. There is no pity. There is no pity. They're polite. But if you do one thing outside the rules, you'll certainly know about it. And if you're following somebody up, what would you do then is once they have been assigned to come back to court, they would be taken from the holding tank and they'd be taken to the Don jail. So in the afternoon, I would go over to the Don jail and I would meet with that individual. Now, that's really scary. As you know, the Don jail has been closed now. But back in those days, they had these huge brass doors that were there for the trucks, the cars to go through, the vans to go through, and a little side door that you'd go through as an individual. And again, there would be that, as the door closed behind you, and you knew that you were no longer in free zone. You were now in a different type of zone. It is very scary. And you'd be put into a small little room that would be no bigger than likely twice the size of our bathroom here at the church. And there would be a table and 2 chairs, one for the person that you were visiting and one for yourself. no windows except for a little window on the door. And you would sit and you would chat with this young man. In our case, it was mostly young men that we met with, or men that we would meet with, and get the information that we could to try to help him. Make the phone call to his lawyer, contact his family, make sure that his local church knew that he was in difficulty. It was an interesting experience. I was glad at the end of the summer it was over, and I thought I wouldn't have to get back into that system again. Now, I've also told you that I have a friend that was found guilty of murder in the Sarnia area. He was given 25 years to life. Now, there are 4 of us that are convinced that he was not guilty, but that's beside the point. The jury found him guilty, and he was sentenced, and he was put into Millhaven to start with, and then transferred over to Warkworth medium security. Now, the 4 of us would go up about every 3 to 4 months. Well, lucky about 4 or 5 times a year in the good weather. And we would visit with him. And we went up and down the justice system with him. The possibility of appeal, the denial of appeal, possibility of new evidence not being accepted. And it was quite heartbreaking to be involved, but we felt it necessary to be there for his support. Now, it's interesting, God, I think, in his own way, had a role for this individual, because when he went to Warkworth, there was basically no recreational programs going on. And he went to the warden and he asked the warden for permission to set up some recreational programs. And the warden said yes, but with certain conditions. And he gave him what the conditions were, and they were all ones that he could accept. So my friend was at Warkworth for about 10, maybe 15 years. And during that time, he set up tournaments, regular workouts at the gym for things like badminton, volleyball, floor hockey, arranged for equipment to be sent in by sponsors. During the summertime, they would have baseball and tennis. And what he found was that those that were involved in the activities were the ones that tended not to get involved in trouble within the institution. In other words, they had something to do. They had something to look forward to. Now remember, my friend is in for 25 years. So at about the 15th year, he gets transferred to what then was called Pittsburgh Minimum Security. It's now called Joyceville Minimum Security, which is just outside of Kingston. So we traveled down there. By the way, Warkworth is north of Brighton by about a 20-minute drive going north up off of Brighton. And so it was a longer drive for us, but we continued to go on. And about 4 or 5 years ago, they changed the regulations about visiting. Used to be we could just get on the telephone and decide this weekend looks good, we're going to go. So we'd arranged. One lived in the Chatham area. 2 of us lived in Woodstock, and our other colleague lived in Toronto. So we would arrange to have one car, and we'd pick up everybody, and off we'd go. And we had a grand time, by the way. We had a great time visiting each other, getting caught up on all the gossip on the Ministry of Community and Social Services and that sort of thing. But the government decided that they needed better security. They were having too many drugs getting into the institution. So then you had to give 2 weeks' notice before you could go. So you have to phone, you have to be approved to start with, and then you have to phone ahead and say, okay, Agnes, Keith, Rhonda, and Rosemary, we're off to see Dawn that day. And that just took away the flexibility. I mean, now you've got a plan. You've got to plan about a month ahead whether you're going to go. It's not a case if you happen to be driving by, you can drop off and sit and talk to somebody. You just can't do it. The system is not set up for rehabilitation. The system is set up for custodial care until the end of the person's sentence. Now, Don, again, created all these other programs at Joyceville that he did at Walkworth. And he started a gardening program where they have plots. They give a substantial amount of their vegetables to the food bank in Kingston. He has organized fundraisers from the PIN money that the prisoners have. And this is given to programs in the Kitchener area, such as the Boys and Girls Club and the Big Brothers Big Sisters program. He arranges around Christmas time for a purchase from one of the grocery stores of the things that aren't in the canteen. And people would give him a list of what they want, and if it's an approved list that the warden has said that they could order, and the order comes in usually between $13,000 to $15,000. And then there are about 4 or 5 of them that will separate it, put it in bags with the person's name on it, and then they'd come into the gym and pick it up during a period of maybe an hour and a half. So he's brought life, a positive life, back into an environment that's not set up to be positive. The system is wrong. The system has to be corrected. I don't know how we do it, but we've got to find a way. And I've got to say to you that there are a number of systems that are wrong, as far as I'm concerned. This is not supposed to be a political sermon. It's my identification of having worked in social services field for 30 years of some of the things that I think need to happen. We made a terrible mistake as far as the type of programs that we created for our geriatric population. Nursing homes are much the same as what we had in the field of developmental services when I first started 30 some odd years ago. They're a warehouse program. Now, they have some positives, they have recreation and so on and so forth. But if you have an outbreak like COVID-19, you know what's going to happen when you have 30 to 100 people all in one location. And it's happened. And it didn't need to happen. The governments, and I say governments because it's been numerous governments over the years in the province of Ontario, could have found different ways of providing services to geriatrics, to seniors. They could have patterned it after what we did in the field of developmental services, where we created a series of small group homes, 4 to 6 people in a house. That way, if you had a breakout, you could very carefully isolate one person and not have 100 people being affected. There's ways of doing it that are different. And I was disappointed to hear that the Premier decided to announce a series of new programs for the seniors. But they're built on the same premise of the program that we already have in place. They're proud to say there are 80 and 100 people going into one location. That's not the way we should be providing services to individuals. Jesus gave us a list of what we should be doing. And that list is based on one-to-one. One-to-one. Now, we've got to find a way to move from one-to-one to system. I don't have the answer. I'm past my prime. I would love to be in the field right now, 20 years younger, and be able to go to the minister and say, look, I've got an idea. I'd love to fulfill this idea. That's not going to happen. But hopefully somebody in the system, somebody that has some political clout, will see the need to change the direction of how we provide services to those that are the most disadvantaged in our community. We did it in the field of developmental services. It's interesting as you listen to the number of places that are in quarantine, very few of the hundreds of group homes across the province are in quarantine. It's because you have smaller numbers. You have more staff. You have better trained staff. That should be the option available to those that are in seniors. Our correctional service shouldn't be a custodial program. It should be a rehabilitation program. A program that allows people to learn. Government in its wisdom, federal government in its wisdom, canceled almost all of the major work programs in the institutions. There used to be programs where they could manufacture furniture. They manufacture other products. And they would be used in the system, not to compete against the general community market. But those were all canceled. In the Kingston area, there used to be a farm that produced enough vegetables and so on and so forth to look after the institutions in the area, both hospitals and prisons. And there used to be a cattle operation that looked after all the meat cost. But that was all canceled. It was canceled. We've got to think of what Jesus was asking us to do, to find ways to change the systems. We need systems, but we need good systems. We need to be able to respect the dignity of individuals, to help them grow, to help them rehabilitate, to help them become active members of our community. And when we're seniors, we should be able to go to a place where we feel comfortable, safe, and secure. Those are rights that we should have. And hopefully we will find ways to influence those decisions. I wrote the Premier after the first wave and suggested to the Premier that he consider the concept of group homes as an alternative to institutions. I got a very nice letter back saying, "Thank you very much. We thank you for your time and your effort of putting this letter together, and we will send it to the appropriate minister." Now, I knew that was going to happen. I've had years of working with government, 35 years of working with ministers. But I had to put something down on paper. I had to express myself. And hopefully each one of us will find time to find a way to express either to our MP or MPP, doesn't matter which party they are, the fact that systems need to change. All of us have a right to dignity. In the name of the Father, Son, and Holy Spirit, amen.